In this video, I'm going to give you 5 pro tips for getting started with home recordings. I'm going to tell you what gear to get, how to use it, and how to think about using it. Okay, my first pro tip is just get the FOCUSRITE SCARLETT. This is an interface. It lets you record right onto your computer. Costs less than $200. You plug it in with a USB connection. It's easy. It sounds good. I can't hold it up because I'm using it right now. I use it myself to record all my YouTube stuff. If my word is good enough, you should just get it now for less than $200 and not think about this again for a long time. If you need to be convinced, keep watching because I did do a test. I also have a different interface. I have a UAD Apollo Quad, which does the same thing FOCUSRITE is supposed to do. It does analog to digital conversion. It lets you record directly into your computer, but it's more expensive and it's more sophisticated. So what I did was I recorded myself playing a single E major chord on my guitar, and I recorded that into a looper pedal, and then I ran the looper pedal into both interfaces and recorded them separately. I'm going to play them now for you, and you can tell me if you hear a difference. Here's the FOCUSRITE. Here's the Apollo. Could you hear a difference? Let's listen again. I don't hear a difference. What does that mean? It means the FOCUSRITE is good enough. Does it mean that the Apollo is a scam? I'm not going that far. It's possible there are differences that I don't hear because my equipment's not good enough. It's also possible if I did a more extensive test, there would be obvious differences. I'm not saying that the FOCUSRITE is as good as anything else that exists, even stuff that might sound the same at first. I'm just saying for less than $200, it's a good value.
Outstanding.
Pro tip number 2 is when you get the FOCUSRITE, get one that has 2 inputs. Don't get one that only has 1 input. Get 2 inputs so that you have the option of recording in stereo. Recording in stereo comes in handy, even if you don't think you're going to need it. It comes in handy, especially using a stereo reverb. Having a stereo reverb can really liven up an otherwise ordinary sounding guitar signal. And the reason is that in real life, everything you hear is in stereo because you have 2 ears. If you just sit in your room listening to your own guitar play through your own amplifier, that signal is taking 2 slightly different journeys to get to each of your ears. And so it enters your mind as 2 slightly different sound sources. And that's why you experience it as a stereo thing. You experience everything as a stereo thing because you have 2 ears. Okay, so using a stereo reverb is a nice way to get back some of that extra spatial quality. And the thing you're about to hear, I use the Alexander Space Force reverb. This is a personal favorite of mine. It's got a number of cool stereo effects in it. I was also using the STRYMON IRIDIUM. This is an amp in a box. One thing I like about this is that I don't have to use a microphone. Setting microphones is an art. I'm not very good at it because I never have to do it because I rely on this as much as possible. I run this into a stereo reverb like the Alexander Space Force. I run that into my FOCUSRITE, and I think it sounds fine. You could do that and not have to think about this again for a long time. By the way, I've used all of this gear for my own professional projects. I've sent clients stuff I did with the Focusrite. They were always happy. I've sent clients stuff I did with the Iridium. They were always happy. I've used it on my own stuff. And if you want to buy this gear, you can support this channel by using my affiliate links to make the purchase. I've got affiliate links with perfectcircuit.com. You can buy all this stuff. And if you use my links to do it, I'll get a small commission. So I'll put the links in the description of this video. Pro tip number 3 is, if you're going to record a guitar with distortion, try using less distortion than you think you need. Using less distortion can make it easier when you're mixing to carve out space for the bass and the drums and the vocals and whatever else. And if you can get all those things to be balanced, your guitar will end up sounding more rich and more full. So in a way, using less distortion can help you sound bigger in the end. Now, I'm not saying using a lot of distortion is bad. It can be a lot of fun. I love those records too. I'm just saying it can be more work to make something work in a mix with a lot of distortion. And if you get that part wrong, you'll end up sounding smaller and dinkier anyway. And to prove it, I recorded something using the Barbershop overdrive from Fairfield Circuitry. I think this sounds great, but it's what I guess you would call like a middle gain pedal. It's giving you less saturation than like a diesel distortion pedal. It's giving you less saturation than a metal zone or like a 5150 distortion pedal. Those can all sound great too, but what I'm saying right now is that you can still sound heavy and awesome with this. And to prove it, I used it to cover a Slayer song. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is that one thing that also helps is to double track your guitars. So it means you play your thing once, and then you play it again, and you pan the two performances away from each other. The next pro tip is a piece of advice I heard the filmmaker Robert Rodriguez give about making indie films. And he said you should start by making a list of everything you can get for free, or everything you can borrow, or everything you can use that's either valuable or unusual, and then make a film based on that. There's a version of doing this with music that I think is good advice. And it's basically, before you record anything, think about what your high card is, and then write something based on that. So if a friend of yours has a really nice microphone and you can borrow it, find out what that microphone sounds best, and then write something for that. Or if you're friends with a really good singer, write something for her. Find out what her range is and write the coolest song you can to get her to sing on it. Or if your friend is a really good drummer, find out if you can trade something with him to get him on your record. Basically, find out what your most valuable assets are and then rearrange everything to optimize for those assets. And if this means that you write a type of song that you don't normally write, or you collaborate with some people who are not in your band, or you don't work on the thing in your mind that is the thing you think you are supposed to be working on, be open to that. If you have this masterpiece in your head, but it doesn't really line up with the assets you have in front of you, that's okay. You can do the masterpiece later. You might even have a bigger budget for it later. It might turn out better if you do it later. Right now, where you're just in the home recording stage, rearrange everything to work with the best stuff you have around you. There's a version of this that's larger than home recording that is also useful for doing stuff in the music industry. I'll give you an example. I also record and release original music under the name CyberAttack. CyberAttack is not just pedal videos. I also have my own albums out. I'll put a link in the video description. I recently started recording the second CyberAttack album, and I knew I was going to use a lot of pedals on it, and so I reached out to Mass Distro, which is like a pedal distribution company, and asked if they would be interested in funding my next record if I talked about the pedals I used that they represent. And they said yes. My man at Mass Distro, Alex, said yes. This was because I was trying to think of, like, what's the new way to get a good recording budget? It used to be use a record label to give it to you. Then people started crowdfunding. Sometimes people still do both of those things, but I was trying to be a little more creative, and I just said, I've got this YouTube channel. I make a lot of pedal videos. Is there a way to get money for that? Not just for making more pedal videos, but for making my own record. And the answer turned out to be yes. Money. Now, I realize you might not be an influencer. You might not have a YouTube channel that would get you something like that, but you've got other stuff in your own life. Nobody told me you could just get a recording budget from having a YouTube channel. It was something I thought of because I was trying to make my own Rodriguez list. I guarantee you, if you're imaginative, you can make your own Rodriguez list, and it could open some doors for you. Prepare to die. The last piece of advice is when you're making your Rodriguez list, give special attention to anything you have on it that can make an unusual sound or a different sound or like something that people won't be used to hearing. If you've got gear that can do that or a playing style that can do it or collaborators who are good at it, start there. And the reason is it's going to be hard to compete with the best conventional recordings that have ever been made, okay? I'm talking about stuff like an AC/DC record or a Sheryl Crow record. I love how those records sound, but they sound like $1 million, and that's because they spent $1 million. It's going to be hard for you to beat them at their own game. But if you can start with a set of sounds that people might not have ever even heard before, then you can sort of teach them how to listen to it just by being deliberate and confident with your creation. I'll give you an example. One of my favorite starting points for trying to generate sounds like this is the hors d'oeuvre pedal from Fairfield Circuitry. This is a pedal you plug other pedals into, and then you can reroute your signal through that other pedal over and over and over again. So if you put a distortion pedal in it, you can then send your signal into that distortion pedal a bazillion times. One discovery I made was I put the Earthquaker Devices Tentacle in here. The Tentacle is an analog octave effect. It doesn't even have knobs. That's how you know it's cool. It's a pedal that does not have knobs. It just does this one really specific sort of Jimi Hendrixy octave effect. I put that in here, fed it back I don't know how many times, a lot, and it produced this other thing I wasn't expecting that was like a very glitchy, very bizarre, strange distortion sound that I loved. I used that sound to make a demo for one of the songs on my next record, and the starting point was just that sound, which I double-tracked, and then I added a very basic GarageBand bass synth and a very basic GarageBand drum machine. Later, I went back and added some extra synthesizer stuff, but the starting point was just a weird sound and very basic GarageBand instrumentation. And I did that on purpose because I knew I was going to talk about it in this video. And I wanted to show that you can use very low-tech stuff and make it work if you just commit to building it around your one cool, unusual, special idea. There's a version of this that's like bigger than music, right? I realized that my glitchy GarageBand demo was like not going to be to everybody's taste, but I'm not worried about that. The only thing I care about is that it sounds like I meant to do it. That's the only thing I care about in my life. Anytime I say anything, the only thing I care about is that I want people to be like, it seemed like that guy meant what he said. Oh, sorry, one last thing. You remember before when I told you that I got my recording budget from a bunch of pedal companies and in exchange I have to talk about them? If you're worried that that's like a blow to my integrity or something, or that you can't trust me anymore, I know what you're thinking, and I just want to say I'm going to address that in future videos. If you think it means you can't trust me anymore, okay, then I guess you can't trust me anymore. But I just want to say I have more to say about this, and I will be addressing it in future YouTube videos.